Hello, welcome to the Fantasy Source Fastball Podcast. My name is David A. Arnott, sitting here with Matt Lutovsky. Matt, how have you been doing recently?
I've been all right.
You been all right?
Been fair, yes.
What's got you down?
Well, what's got me down, there's certain players on my teams, as always, that get me down. I was lamenting earlier about Jason Bartlett and how I knew when I drafted him, he's not going to be as good this year. He's going to regress. But he's a shortstop. It's a thin position. And he's even worse than I thought.
Hey, in a non-deeper league, you shoot for the moon, right?
You shoot for something, but he's just... and the thing is, the 4 stolen bases are the killer.
Okay, well, that was going to be a high-risk pick that you took. We're all about minimizing your risk at Fantasy Source Fastball. And so to help you minimize your risk, you've written recently or are about to release, I don't even know, you've written recently about guys who historically have dropped off in the second half. We don't know the reasons why exactly, but these are the guys who have historically done that. So who is the first guy off the top of your head that you think of when you think of second half drop-off?
Well, the classic is Dan Herron. He's the guy who, I mean, it's almost mythical at this point, the Dan Herron second half swoon, and it's all the worse this year because he pitched poorly in the first half. So it's like, oh my gosh, how bad can he be if he keeps getting, if he does this typical routine? And like, I was recently just offered a trade straight up, BJ Upton for Dan Herron, and I considered it strongly because I was like, gosh, you know, if it all holds, he's going to have a 6 ERA in the second half, but I wound up not doing it. But it's, you know, he's kind of the patron saint of this whole second half fall off.
Now, bad Dan Herron historically has still been, you know, okay, not decent. Bad at all.
Right.
BJ Upton, definitely like one of those weird guys. It's one of my favorite phrases is that he's filed a Ben grievance.
Yeah.
Where, you know, early on in the career he was fantastic. He had that one fantastic season, but he's still good even though he's been going on a downhill trend. Who else is on that historical list of guys who kind of have a second half that they forget?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys, you know, because I've been writing about the pitcher specifically. And I'm actually going to do it in the Fastball blog on Saturday because I wrote about some of the under-the-radar guys today in Inside Pitch, guys like Joel Pinheiro, like Carlos Silva, some of these guys who have had good first half, but typically their second half numbers aren't strong. But there are plenty of stars, too. Justin Verlander is a big one. If you look at his second half splits over the past 5 seasons, not good at all. And, you know, just players like that. John Danks is another big one. He's never had a good second half, and he was a guy who was strong in the first half. So, you know, identifying these guys, looking at splits is important. And like you said before, we don't know why. And there's no hard and fast rule. Oh, it's July 18th. that you know, so-and-so's body clock is just set to suck. But, you know, when it's a pattern, when it's happened 3, 4, 5 years in a row, 4 out of 5 years, whatever, that means something. And it's something to look at for your players and decide, is it time to trade? Is it time to acquire someone else?
So if a fantasy manager were to decide today to spend a couple hours trying to figure out who on his team historically has had that kind of pattern, what's the most efficient way for him to go about that?
I mean, the most efficient way is, you know, there's obviously plenty of websites and certainly Sporting News. We have our, you know, the free player pages and they have splits on them. And you just go and you do career splits and you just look, post All-Star, pre-All-Star. You can find those a number of places.
Just take those 2 hours and scroll through?
Yeah, I mean, it won't even really take that long because, you know, there's some guys that no matter what, like if you have Adam Wainwright, you're not worried. Whatever. Adam Wainwright's fine. Yeah, Albert Pujols, you're not worried. You know, even a guy like Josh Johnson or someone like that, you're not worried about. But it's those mid-range guys. It's the Ted Lillys of the world.
Because you're trying to find whatever edge you can get with those guys.
And the other thing I always say to people with trades is everyone, when they make a trade, they want to trade a 2 and get a 9, you know? But you don't have to do that to win a trade. You can trade a 6 and get an 8 and you win.
This is one of my favorite stories, is that guy who started out with a red paperclip and ended up with a house. Because he traded for something that was slightly better.
Exactly. So you don't have to, you know, you don't have to trade garbage for a great guy. So if you just find a guy, and typically in the second half, you know, like one of those guys I mentioned struggles a little bit, like Verlander, or there's a guy who's usually better, like Scott Baker, typically. John Lackey usually has a decent second halves. And you just trade for a guy like that, and you trade another guy who's on a similar plane but doesn't have great second halves, you win the trade. And your team's better, and that's what you want.
Matt Lutovsky, thanks for joining us on the Fantasy Source Fastball Podcast.
No problem.